A note. Following advice from work-life imbalance may lead to action being taken by HR, your family, the authorities, or higher powers. Welcome to Work-Life Imbalance, an advice show focusing on workplace and lifestyle issues. Any resemblance to actual advice, living or dead, or actual wisdom is purely coincidental. I'm your monstrous manager, Frank Eastman.
And I'm your lovable office companion, Derek Lewis.
Today, we'll be talking about time management in the deep dive before we address some audience questions and issues from the internet. But first,
The Daily Stand-Up.
time for the daily stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
So, guess what yesterday was?
Yesterday, so that would be June 16th. I've got nothing for that. What was it?
Yesterday was the summer solstice, and
Okay.
more importantly, the Fremont neighborhood in Seattle Solstice Festival.
Okay.
Which is to say, Kat texted me early in the morning to say outside of my window, there are a whole bunch of naked people on bicycles.
Well, I guess I don't really have to ask what the what the accoutrement of the holiday is. Apparently it is naked people on bicycles.
Naked people on bicycles. That is apparently the big thing for the solstice. The summer solstice in particular. The winter solstice might be a little, nippy for that particular wardrobe choice.
That may not work out so well.
But yeah, apparently the tradition is to get all like covered in body paint, do like a whole big body paint costume, and other than the body paint, just hop on your bike all natural and ride it in a big parade.
Oh man, that I could not think of anything worse than slathering myself up in in paint and giving myself a bicycle seat suppository. That sounds absolutely dreadful.
That's kind of where I was too. I'm like, I barely want to get on my bike. I really don't want to get on my bike naked.
Right, and the thing is, like, after you do that bicycle seat is burned. Like, you can't, that is no longer usable by anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, conceptually it's burned, and physically it would be shortly thereafter burned. I would just be like, well, let me get the wrench, taking this one off, throwing it in the fire.
That actually concerns me because, if obviously we live in the South, so we're nowhere near that. But if I lived near the Seattle area and, it was right after the solstice and somebody was selling a bicycle, I would have to very pointedly ask them, was this used in the solstice festivities? Because if it was, maybe I wouldn't like completely cancel the purchase, but I would at a minimum say, knock about $20 off so I can buy a new fucking seat.
I mean, we live in the South, and I'm a pretty big guy, so I'm pretty sure that I could start the parade in a complete full-body Captain America costume, and about 5.5 minutes after we started, I would just be blue, white, and red tie-dye. Dripping off my toes.
I was about to say, at best, it would be blue, white, and red tie-dye. At worst, it would have just completely sloughed off, and you would be completely au naturel.
And here's the thing, like, there's a big festival that's part of it. It's a 2-day thing, so it's still going on. I had to look it up because, the initial question was the fuck. When I was told that there was a bunch of naked people on bicycles outside the window. And they've got like a whole website for the festival, and there is a FAQ, and within the FAQ are questions like, is this an all ages festival? Which it is. The only note
good.
is is to know that the traditional garb of the bike folks is very often, just body paint.
Right.
And so there is a note that is like, please be courteous and take into account the eye level of children when deciding on your outfit off the bike.
What the fuck does that mean?
I think
What
it
are you
means
talking about?
I think it means like feel free to be naked on your bike, but get like a loincloth or something so you don't have the dangle whapping the children as you walk through the parade, like the festival grounds.
I'm sorry, but I guess I don't understand, like that seems like a weird stipulation. Like, you're having a bicycle festival that is all about, like, I guess not completely about nudity, but it is a large part of it is about nudity. And you're worried about, like, kids seeing the dangly bits?
Oh,
like, that seems weird.
It's not just the bike thing. Like, the bike thing is a big part of it. That's like the parade, but then there's a big sort of outdoor art festival that goes along with it. So you get all slathered up in your body paint, ride around on the bike for an hour or so, and it's a little less hot there than it is here, but still, you're riding around on the bike for a while, then you jump off the bike, throw on, like, I don't know, your loincloth or whatever, and then walk around the art festival and, check out the booths and...
I don't know. I get it. I understand. Like, I'm not even necessarily worried about the fact that they're a bunch of naked hippies, riding through on bicycles. I'm just worried about about their odd choice of decency when it comes to that. Oh, okay. I'll get off the subject. I'll try to be funny about something else.
Well, there are other useful notes, like if you're going into any restaurants or bars in the neighborhood during the festival, please bring a towel, because
oh no!
Otherwise it can take weeks to get the body paint off of the bar stools and benches, and in some instances, depending on the fabric, it may ruin them completely, so it is greatly appreciated if you bring a towel to sit down on.
See, I am, the body paint part of it that's completely practical. Bring yourself a little, some like baking, butcher's paper, lay it down so that you don't get your paint on the stalls and stuff like that. I am far more worried about the butt and genital schmutz that they would be imparting upon these things. You can get something to clean paint. There are some smells that just do not come out of fabric, and that is right up there on the list. If I had an establishment around there and I saw some naked people walking in, I would not appeal to their sense of, hey, don't get paint on my stuff. I would appeal to their sense of, please don't put your stank ass on my bar stools.
Your funky summer bike butt.
Your funky summer bike butt. Please don't do that. Oh God. Oh, I thought that, like, I don't know, some festival where they like strap spiders to you and have them like bite you repeatedly. I thought that would be the kind of scene that would be the least likely for me to attend. But I think this may be the least likely festival for me to ever attend whatsoever. At least as a participant. Like, I'm not really like a voyeur. Like, I'm not gonna be going to it like I'm not going to like nude beaches and watching nudie people. Like, that's not my thing. I mean, besides, that's what the internet's for. But I am not going to subject other people to my naked body. That just doesn't seem like a good scene, to be honest.
It's only polite.
I mean, there's only so much that paint can hide. 2 layers of fabric are normally what it takes to keep to keep my body decent. So I am not gonna go with with like a micron of vinyl keeping me from complete nudity. That sounds like a bad time. Okay, we've talked about the mechanics a little bit. What really is the what started this? Like, who decided, hey, sun's out, buns out, let's go ride a bike? Like who started this?
I don't know necessarily. I honestly did do a slight amount of research, and it just seems like the kind of thing that the city was, because Fremont is kind of like a little city that got absorbed into Seattle in like the late 1800s. So I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's pretty much always been a part of modern Seattle, but it has always
Right.
been known as like the crazy artist commune.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where like Keep Seattle Weird is sort of
Yeah.
has its locus. They call it the center of the universe, and they do stuff like this. Like there's like a troll statue under a bridge that is large enough that part of the statue is it is crushing a Volkswagen Bug in one hand.
Now, are we talking about like the mythical creature troll, or like the little statues with the funky hair and the little jewel in the belly button?
It's a mythical troll. It would be
Okay.
much better if it were the other one, but I'm fairly certain like all the hair would get kind of rank pretty quick.
Yeah, and you'd really have to hire somebody to be like the hair keeper, and that's really not a good time. No, but I could see, as a community trying to stand out, like this being something that that would be right up their alley. Did you happen to see any other of the other than the troll, obviously, other random bullshit this town has decided to be its claim to fame?
Well, there was one guy that raised up money via mortgaging his house to take a statue of Lenin and bring it and restore it and put it up in town. So they've got their
Oh
own
boy.
they've got their own statue of Lenin.
Not sure that's the horse I want to hitch my wagon to, but that's different.
It
It
definitely
definitely
is
makes them
different.
stand out.
It
Oh
seems like
god.
a pretty fun little place to hang out. Like I didn't necessarily realize what the area was like until I started looking it up. It's one of those things where you're like, all right, Fremont, cool, that's a neighborhood. There's a lot of neighborhoods all over the place. Everybody's got a neighborhood.
Right.
Until someone texts you like, there is just a stream of naked people on bikes passing the window.
It's like a hippie nudist colony that just happened to incorporate. Like, they're like, oh well, we got a zip code now, so I guess we can start putting out some sort of a newsletter or something.
I mean, that seems to be the only naked thing. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, seeing as I kind of had to look the place up yesterday to investigate as to why there were naked people on bikes. But it
And I mean,
seems like other than the summer solstice, they're just like, yep, that's cool. During the summer, we put body paint all over ourselves and hop on the bike and cruise it around town for a little while.
like you said, for the winter solstice, that would be kind of hard to replicate that in the frigid fucking north. But I mean, I can also understand how that would be a very difficult and treacherous Google search to craft to attempt to try to suss out what you're looking for of naked events in Seattle. We talked about some weird ads coming up from some of the Google searches prompted by this show. That would definitely get you some singles in the area.
If they've got, because if they've got the summer solstice one, there's the winter solstice one. I think I could probably go in for the naked bike ride during the winter solstice, just given my body type.
You certainly would be the last survivor, I think.
I think so. Like it would just be like it's more of an endurance race. Like the summer one is kind of a ha-ha festival. This one is just like the death race to see who gets across the finish line alive. And I'm pretty sure I could take all the kale eating hipsters from the artist colony in a trek across the frozen north with nothing but a bike seat for protection.
Of the nude sports, I think this is the closest that your particular situation could come to performance enhancing drugs, because you have been training for that particular event your entire life and you just didn't know.
My time has come. My people need me.
Oh god.
Want to get to the deep dive, Derek?
Let's do that. All right, today on the deep dive, we want to talk about time management. We all agreed to give a certain amount of our time to our employer for a certain amount of money. How much of that time is actually spent truly working is another matter entirely. Between social media, streaming services, and other distractions, keeping ourselves on task is probably more difficult than it's ever been. Frank, as someone who deals in the realm of the mighty man hour, how much of your time do you spend managing other people's time management?
Managing other people's time management. Like I thought we were going to ask me my time management, but
No,
managing
that's step two.
that's step 2. Other people, I think probably, I mean, it's not a huge amount. It's maybe 15-20% of my job. And I less manage their time management and more encourage them to make good decisions. In this new age of agile software development, I'm more like a parent with no power and limited visitation than I am any sort of taskmaster. At best, I can be like, "Are you sure what you want to be doing right now is playing World of Warcraft?"
Yeah, I could see that. That would be kind of a difficult situation to be in because, like you said, if you don't actually have the power to enforce those good practices that you are espousing, that makes it kind of difficult. Because I mean, basically, it's like you're the parent that doesn't whip its children. You can only like give them a timeout or a scolding, uh, so you can't actually like they're sitting there playing World of Warcraft, and you're like, shouldn't you be working? And they're like, fuck you, dad.
You're not my real dad anyway.
You're not my real dad.
I don't even think I can give time out, like I at best I've got the stern look and the scolding of.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of a difficult scene anyway, because giving the timeout, at least if they're playing WoW, they're like scratching an itch so that maybe eventually they would get back to doing actual work. But if you give them a timeout, not only are they not doing work, but they're also not doing the thing that they wanted to do in the first place. So once they get out of timeout, they will then finish what they were doing, whatever raid and or set of quests they were doing in World of Warcraft, and then would hopefully eventually get to work. But that would be sunk time.
World of Warcraft and Facebook are both essentially like just drips of dopamine directly
You are
to
exactly
a pick
right.
line. And it's like, how are you supposed to compete with that? Like,
Yeah.
both of these things have been cunningly engineered over the course of a decade to just suck all of your life force out. And so if someone starts, like if someone is far enough gone that they're willing to World of Warcraft on the company dime, like there's not a fuck lot we can do at that point. That's a lost cause. We just box them up and slowly push them out the bay door.
Yeah, but no, I mean you were actually, I mean, both from like a psychological perspective and a chemical perspective, you're exactly right that both like Facebook, social media, and like addictive games like World of Warcraft are almost identical in their chemistry because of the amount of dopamine that they the little doses of dopamine they give you out throughout the experience. With with World of Warcraft and things like that, essentially every time you get a new weapon or a new piece of armor or a little bit of gold or something like that, or a new skill, you get that rush of like, yeah, I just got something. That's it's triggering something in me. But the same thing with like Facebook. Every time you get a like or a share or somebody comments on something, you get that little rush of dopamine. So from like an addiction perspective, like it is identical. And that's kind of a problem, and that's why it's so difficult to kind of balance those into the overall time management, because essentially work is work. Like sometimes you can get those kind of dopamine bumps while you're doing work, because like you feel like you've accomplished this thing, or you've solved this really difficult problem that's been plaguing you for a while. You feel that rush of endorphins from a job well done. But it's fewer and far between, and I mean that's exactly what Facebook and those type of games are designed to do. Like it's supposed to be you get it easier than by doing work. Therefore, fuck work, let's go, dick around on this other thing.
And for some people, doing the work, like if you get the opportunity to do what you love so that doing work is also sort of hitting those reward centers, that's the best place you can be. And I hate you because nobody should be having more fun than I am.
And, and I think that I was kind of lucky to, kind of find the career that I really enjoy. It still is work. Like it's not quite a, it's not like I'm going into, I don't know, fucking eat ice cream all day. But it's definitely something that's rewarding to me and something that I enjoy. But even though I enjoy it and I feel like I'm lucky to have this career, there's still times where I'm like, I really don't want to go fucking unit test that. I would rather, I don't know, I would rather be doing anything else. So yeah, that's when, you have those difficult afternoons where maybe you've eaten a heavy meal, or the coffee is running out and you are really just, you are trying to keep it together. But if you have a really tight deadline, you're kind of in a precarious situation because your brain is going to want to tell you to kind of switch off and, pull something up on Netflix or YouTube or Twitch if your office allows it, and just kind of turn your brain off for a little bit. So without spilling the beans too much, how much of a struggle do you find it to stick on task whenever things get difficult like that?
See, for me, I guess I'm one of those people that just always remains perpetually paranoid that, like, when you said Netflix and Twitch, I was like, who the fuck has the cojones to sit there and watch Twitch or, stream the latest Santa Clarita Diet on Netflix in the middle of the workday? Like, that's just fucking baffling to me. So I don't necessarily have the same problems in that respect. Like, I think for me, it's more just like I'll wander off a little bit in the slowest moments. Like, I just won't be there anymore, and I will go do something else.
It sounded very ominous there for a second. Like, do you just disapparate when you're bored? Like,
you gotta hold my attention, Derek, or I just kind of puff into smoke.
Or your whatever binds you to this plane of existence ceases, and you return from whence you came.
That dark realm calls me back.
No, personally, I live in this constant state of, I don't know, mild interruption. And it can be from any source. It could be from a phone call, a notification from something else in the company, an email, whatever. I am in a constant state of interruption. So the problem with that, when I put on my headphones and try to do some real serious heads down work, I pretty much have to attempt to tune everything out, like turn off notifications and set my phone on the other side of the desk so I can't even feel it vibrate. Because once that switch flips and I'm in like heads down mode, I've got about 20 good minutes of knocking this shit out of the park. And, so in 20 minutes, I can achieve, 3 or 4 hours of, somewhat interrupted, so that context switching mentality that we're normally in. I can get a lot more done in 20 minutes than I can of, 3 or 4 hours of only mild attention. Once that 20 minutes is up, maybe I get another 20 minutes. Maybe I get 20 after that. Like, maybe I get this long stretch of really knocking stuff out of the park. Doesn't happen often. Essentially, I get that 20 minutes knocked out of the park. All of a sudden, I open up my notifications. There's like 50 of them. So I'm like, oh, fuck. So, and a lot of them are work related.
If you do it that way, it's called having a problem. However, if you write a article or book about it and put a framework around it, suddenly you've got the next breakout business hit.
Right.
Because what you're basically describing is the Pomodoro method, by which you set a timer and then you heads down for as long as the timer's running, and then when the timer rings, you get up, you do something else for 5 minutes, and then you come back, set your timer again, and heads down. And it's supposed to keep your focus on the work during the times when you're working by
Right.
giving you segmented periods of concentration.
Right. Which is exactly the same, essentially mine was a less healthy version of that, but it was attempting to do that thing. But it kind of leads into my next point, or my next bullet of time at work versus time out of work. Essentially, a lot of people in our profession tend to think that the more time you are physically at the office, the more work somebody will get out of you. So my question to you is, and I think I kind of already know the answer. Um, is the correct answer, or is the correct formula to get as much time out of people as possible, or is it to get less time but more focused time? Essentially, the calculation is: would you rather have people be at work for 12 hours a day, a third of that which is actual productive work, or would you rather essentially just let people come in for 4 to 5 hours a day of no bullshit, all focused work?
I mean, from a modern management perspective, I would say it's better to get a shorter period of time that is higher quality work than to demand a longer period of time that does not necessarily produce the same amount of quality. The
Right.
pessimistic manager will come back and say, if we cut the workday from 8 hours to 6 hours, but people fuck off for 25% of the 8 hours, and they fuck off for 25% of the 6 hours, all we've done is you're still fucking off for 25% of the time that you're here. You're just here less. And
Right.
so we're getting less out of you, as opposed to the assumption that, I've only got, say, 4 hours of high quality productivity in me, and so I can either sit here for 8 hours to give you 4 hours of good productivity, or I can sit here for 6 hours to give you 4 hours of productivity. And either way, you're getting the same amount out of me, and the other way, I'm not sitting here soaking up your air conditioning for an additional 2 hours of the day.
And that is not, in my mind, that is not a crazy calculus to try to work out, because the thing is that, let's say that of all the time that I'm in the office, I probably have 3 to 4 hours of 100% focused time, and that might even be a little bit liberal, like that might be a little bit high, just because every time you put your headphones on, and you get an email, it sets you back to zero. Like, you have to build that focus back up and build up that concentration. So, I've done side projects in the past where essentially, any time that I've worked on it has been, my own time that I have, cordoned off to work on this thing. And all the work that I've done for those side projects, which at this point probably has been 800, 900 hours of side work, every time when I've sat down to start coding on a side project, I have been laser focused because I knew that it was my time. I knew that the more I devoted to this, it wasn't going to result in more money. The more time I spent towards it, the less I was making. So I wanted to be laser focused in what I was doing. So, in those 800, 900 hours of freelancing, essentially maybe, probably 10 hours of that might have been fucking around. Like, maybe I'll check an email or look up a YouTube video, because if you're listening to music on YouTube and it like rolls over to another video and it's like some chuckle fuck falling down a set of stairs, like suddenly you're in a a bit of a YouTube rabbit hole. But most of that is heads down focus time. So that kind of has kind of led me to believe that if people just kind of let go of that 40-hour work week myth, if people were allowed to essentially do the work in the time that they felt most comfortable doing it, obviously, I think flex time has a limit. Like, you don't want to have somebody doing their work from 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. just because you want to have a team atmosphere. But honestly, if somebody can do the same amount of work in 3 hours that somebody else can do in 8, I say fuck it. Let him do it in 3 hours. Let him be available for meetings and conversations and things like that. But if they can knock the work out in 3 hours, I think that's not That's not bad. I mean, I think that's a positive exchange.
Yeah, if you can harness like the intent and the effort of the worker to do the work, and they're excited about it, then you're kind of good to go. Like that's that sort of situation where if you're excited to do the work, it's not necessarily really work, and as long as you can keep people engaged at that level, then the work that they're doing, the time that they're there is quality time. And if they're not engaged, then do you really want to be paying them to sit around and stare off into space? For me, I think it's like getting commitments. If we can come to an agreement as to what a realistic and rational commitment is, and we have signed off on that together, between manager and worker, then whatever you need to do in order to make that commitment, that's what I'm looking for. Right. So if I feel a completely rational commitment is for you to deliver me, this set of working software in 2 weeks, and you agree, you're like, yeah, I think I can do that in 2 weeks. If you do it in a week and a half, fuck it. I'm not going to be like, well, cool, you did that in a week and a half. I've got some other stuff for you to do. It's just like, all right, cool. You met your commitment. That's what I was looking for. And if it comes down to it, and you've got to work, a couple of 9 or 10 hour days in order to meet that commitment, well, then hopefully you won't commit to that much in the next cycle.
Right. And the thing is, like, if somebody has to put in a couple of 9 or 10 hour days, it's probably not because they underestimated the work, and essentially it was just more work than they had anticipated. Honestly, it probably is like, oh well, they probably shouldn't have spent that 1 hour fucking around on something else. They should have been working on that thing. But yeah, I've had people that I've worked with that have literally, they had 2 hours a day where they were working, pretty much undistracted and fully on task. But those 2 hours were fucking magical. Like they could fucking, like, honestly, if somehow you could distill that 2 hours and turn it into somebody that could concentrate like that for an entire 8 hours, like we would have Skynet tomorrow. Like somebody would be able to program Skynet tomorrow, because those 2 hours were magical. Like it was impressive the amount of work this guy could get done in a couple of hours. But then the other 6 hours, like he would fuck right off. Like just would unabashedly fuck right off. But the thing is, like, to management, I would defend him tooth and nail, because the thing is, my 8 hours of 4 to 5 hours of work that I'm actually doing versus the 3 that I'm a little bit interrupted, distracted, like those are, his 2 hours are worth way more than my 4 or 5. So if you're gonna don't get rid of anybody, but if anybody's on the chopping block, he's worth more to you than the rest of us.
You know what else is magical, Derek?
What's that, Frank?
The elevator to accounting.
It is quite magical.
Do you read books? Do you live near small bodies of water surrounded by trees and other wildlife? Is that geese shit? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you have found a home here at the Brook Reading Podcast. Each week, I read a book while nestled in my small New Jersey apartment and gaze out the window at a brook. Then, I jump online, talk about it, ask for your opinions, and bitch about something for approximately 5 minutes. If you'd like to join this madness, check me out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or on Libsyn.com. You can also contact me at brookreading@gmail.com or on Twitter at brookreadingpod. Let's step into some animal feces together.
Yeah, but if we can keep this next section to a tight 30, that'd be great, because I've got some Italian beef waiting on me. And that's not a euphemism. That's actually...
It's like, all right, you be into what you into. All right, Derek, want to go into the review retrospective?
That sounds delightful. Let's see what the people have to say.
All right. So our first one is from Papa D182. 5 stars. Relatable fun. These hosts have great chemistry. I like their casual back and forth. They're witty, funny, and very relatable to the working class. The advice is from everyday people that share everyday situations. Really fun show.
Everyday people?
Working class?
Who the fuck do they think we are?
I'll have you know that I am lower middle class at best.
But no, really, thank you for the compliments. That was nice. That was maybe a little too truthful, but nice.
I'm always willing to take the truth, Derek. Like, we're just average Joes. We're the kind of people that you could crack a beer with. Although currently I'm on a low-carb diet, so I can't actually drink beer. But
had to be like a Michelob Ultra.
Derek, I respect myself too much to drink a fucking Michelob Ultra. I would rather sit there, crack open a decent beer, and everyone else drinks their beer while I slowly pour it out sip by sip on the ground.
I feel that you would respect yourself more in the morning doing that than the alternative.
Or worse, Michelob Ultra with lime.
Oh, that's a thing?
That's a thing. Like,
Oh,
I don't
God.
know. At this point, let's just fucking stop trying. Like, if I both can't stomach beer and also I can't handle, the calories and carbs involved in a beer, I'll have a fucking water. Jesus. It's already like having sex in a canoe anyway.
What?
Weak beer. It's like having sex in a canoe. It's fucking close to water.
That is the first time I have ever heard that phrase. Oh, that is great. Oh. Just read the next one, Frank. Come on.
All right. The next one is from Musical Buccaneer. 5 stars. Wish I worked with these guys. If ever there was a show that elevated the two guys talking about stuff format, it's this one. Derek and Frank are hilarious and share the easy banter of two people who've been cracking jokes together for a long time. It's an easy, breezy listen, and, as a fellow office drone, extremely relatable. Also, Frank sounds like Ron Swanson, and that really only makes things better. So this is my favorite review. I don't know why. I just feel a certain kinship with it.
See, but it's also my favorite because when they said Derek and Frank, they said my name first, so that's cool.
But we elevate the two guys talking about stuff format, so I'm glad that we are able to do that.
The stuff being sex jokes.
Yeah, I was going to say, mostly jerking off and pooping, I think is... Like, I say certain things are not on brand for us, but I don't know as I want to be part of the brand that is on brand for this podcast. That's kind of where I'm at.
Don't be afraid of it, Frank. Embrace it.
I'm going to have to lean into it.
Well, I don't know. Maybe don't lean into the poop. Then you gotta like wash your elbow and stuff. That's gross. But no, thank you so much for the reviews. We appreciate it. All right. It's time for the Indie Podcast Corner. In this segment, we take a few minutes to tell you about a new podcast that we've been enjoying that we think you will enjoy too. This week, our featured show is the Real Feels podcast. The hosts are Drew and Nathan, and
Derek,
they watch...
Derek,
Huh?
I have real feels.
Uh-huh.
I have real feels already because you know what you didn't do?
What's that?
You didn't make the theme song, Derek.
No, I didn't. I promise you. I spent 3 hours trying to write a fucking jingle yesterday. I swear to Christ, like the people that wrote like the Oreo jingle and all that kind of shit, they probably spent less time writing that than I have tried writing this jingle. Every time I do it, it sounds like fucking Mr. Rogers. I don't know what is wrong.
Hey, I loved Mr. Rogers. He was a good person.
But I don't think we've earned enough credit with our listeners for me to be able to put on some like Mr. Rogers ass shit and have people take it at face value. So we'll see.
All right, I just wanted to know that you suffered for your art, Derek.
So I suffered, and then once I finish it, everybody else will be able to suffer too.
That's the only reason we do anything in this world, isn't it?
True.
So that we can inflict it on others.
But they are the Real Feels podcast. It's hosts Drew and Nathan. They watch and review classic movies from their childhood, such as Willow, Happy Gilmore, and Little Rascals. It is very funny, and they are truly just genuinely nice guys that make the whole show an absolute delight. Just listening to them kind of like recalling their childhood wonder about these movies is so heartwarming. And the episode they did on Willow is just fucking great. They had their first guest ever, a guy named Jack, and not really sure who the guy was, but I have never known anybody to know that much about Willow. Like, it was scary. Like, he knew so much about Willow. But just the conversation they had about it was so fantastic, and I think it broke a lot of their like personal records as far as like downloads and things like that. So if you want a good one to get into their podcast and know what it's about, the Willow episode, I think it's episode 8, is really great. They release episodes every other Wednesday, and you can find them anywhere you get podcasts, and that is the Real Feels podcast. You can find them on Twitter at Real REEL Feels Pod.
You know, Derek, I'm listening to this, and I have a question. Who the fuck's childhood manages to span the Little Rascals, Willow, and Happy Gilmore? Because isn't the Little Rascals from, like, the 1950s or 60s?
Not that one. Like, the one with... The one, like, the relatively new one from, like, the 90s, I think, where it's like, I got a pickle. I got a pickle. I got a pickle. Hey, 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 hey. You don't remember that one?
The fuck, Derek? I've been asking you for a theme song for the last 2 episodes, and you give me this pickle horse shit.
Well, I mean, sometimes inspiration just strikes, Frank.
I guess I missed a... Okay, there's a lot of shit about the 90s that I, like, did not get. My childhood kind of encompassed much of the 80s. So I think a lot of this, my childhood stuff that involves the 90s, I don't necessarily see in the same way as some other people. And that fucking makes me feel old, man. Like, it honestly does.
My first interaction, or my first introduction to the Little Rascals was the movie in, like, the 90s. I didn't know that they had existed, before then. But yeah, that was the incarnation.
Jesus
that
Christ.
Don't worry. I will forward it to you, and we can watch it. Maybe we can do some sort of simulcast, and we can do some riff tracks on it. How about that?
There we go. I can just sit here going, "What the fuck is this?" over and over again.
I'm not saying it's aged well. It probably has not. But if you are like me and you remember some of those movies, watch what they have to say about them. It's a really good time.
Who the hell decides to remake some yuck kid jokes from the 1950s as a film in the first place? That just... I don't know. Do you remember it fondly?
I mean, yeah, I remember it pretty fondly. Like, I wasn't a very discerning kid. Like, I'm not saying it was, like, the most heartwarming shit ever, but, I mean, it was good when I was, like, 8.
Is this up there with, like, Space Jam? Because I'm also too old to get Space Jam.
Absolutely, yes. It was certainly in the same general. I highly doubt it was the same year, but it was definitely in that age range of people that like Space Jam and people that like the new Little Rascals.
Derek, I feel old. Let's just move on to the next segment. All right, Derek, want to get to an audience question?
Please.
I live in a legal weed state. How baked is too baked for a job interview? sent
Oh,
in by
Christ.
Half Baked in Holyoke.
Wow. Any, honestly. But no.
So baked at all?
Yeah, I'll roll it back though.
Are you a teetotaler, Derek?
For my profession, if you were baked at all coming into an interview, I don't think it would bode well. But it really depends on what field you're interviewing for. Maybe a pizza maker? Even no, that would be bad, because if you were high while you were making pizzas, you would then eat all the pizzas.
At the same time, like in college, there was this guy, and he triple majored in, I want to say, like physics, mathematics, and philosophy, and successfully. And that fucker was baked as hell, like 24/7. I don't think I ever saw that dude when he hadn't been just like ripping it 30 seconds beforehand.
I don't know whether to feel like impressed or what I'm really feeling is like just this visceral anger, because like
that someone can do that.
what was the third? You said physics, mathematics, and what was the third?
Philosophy,
I
think.
I was about to say I was so angry about the first two that when you got to philosophy, I just already tuned it out. The fact that he can major in any one, either mathematics or philosophy or physics, and be completely just fucking stoned out off his gourd. Physics is probably the worst experience I had through college, because mathematics. Well, I was fine. Like I wasn't necessarily. I mean, I was in like math team competitions when I was in high school, but really that was kind of the kid stuff. Like it's like how many apples do you have when you like throw them against a wall and you only threw 3 of them and you had 7? Oh yeah, you got 4. So maybe my gauge of what is high skilled math is not exactly up to par. But no, when I got into college and got into physics, I was like, I could have sworn that I checked the box for English, and like I swear to Christ, like in the second physics class that I had, there was literally a test where 80% of the test was written all in like the Greek alphabet. And let me tell you, my Greek was not very strong. Some of the lowest scores I have ever achieved have been on physics tests. I'm really trying to make a joke here, but I am so livid. Like I am so fucking pissed.
So I think for my part, I think it's however stoned you can be and still handle your shit.
Yeah.
Like, I will say this. If you've got to ask, am I too baked for this interview? The answer is yes.
And you're exactly right, because I think your level of competency while baked is directly proportional or inversely proportional to how many times you ask that question of how baked is too baked. Because if you know how to handle your shit, you won't have to ask anybody if you are too baked to handle this interview. If you're that good at it, you're going to know that you're going to knock it out of the ballpark after 4 or 5 spliffs. Like you will know what your level is or what your limit is. In some cases, like it will be, am I baked enough to pass this interview?
I think the corollary to that is also, if you have to ask someone, do I look stoned heading into the interview, the answer is yes, and you are too stoned for the interview. Like,
and there's the running gag of like 2 guys that are smoking weed, and one looks at the other and it's like, hey man, do I smell like weed? And he's like, nah man, you're good. Like, that's the kind of shit that I would be worried about. Because it's just like with like cigarettes or anything else where essentially there's such like a malodorous note to it. If other people will be able to smell it on you, even if you can't. So maybe go with one of the more high tech options for retrieving that THC buzz. Don't go for the like hot boxing in your Miata. Like that's not going to work out well for you.
That is late 70s, early 80s. I think today it is high quality edibles. For your work interview buzz needs.
Oh, God. Holy shit. So that is the worst fucking idea. Of all the ideas you have had, Frank, that is the worst. And let me tell you why. Because with edibles, okay, so you smoke a joint. You get high right then. With edibles, there is a lot more to factor in on when you will get high. So if you have not eaten anything, you take those edibles, you're going to get it pretty quick. If you have eaten that day and you're thinking, let me pop these edibles 10 minutes before I go into this interview, you're going to be stone cold sober for about 30 minutes. And then it's going to look like you had a fucking stroke. Like it's going to be, you will be mid fucking sentence. And all of a sudden it's like, well, when we're talking about synergy, I think, yeah, man, synergy's great.
So here's the thing. Like, I'm unfortunately showing my hand in the I'm not a hip cat that smokes those marijuana cigarettes. But if that's the case, here I think is the solution. If you can show your math and show up to the interview precisely fucked up enough to be completely functional, that in and of itself is probably successful interview material. If you're like, right, what's up, guys? Just like you to know, I'm kind of high, but not too high. And I did it on edibles. Here's the math where I determined exactly what dosage and when I should take it.
Here is the exact point at which I will
My
peak.
only other question is, when do I start?
Oh, see, but that like we've talked about before, there are certain levels of confidence that are worthy of being aspired to. And walking into an interview with some sort of fucking Gantt chart about when the edibles you just took are going to hit you, that's some balls, I think. No, I can't think of, if we're being completely honest, I can't think of a really great field that you could be going into that it would look good for you to be going in high or talking about your recent marijuana consumption. Even in a legal state, like it's like you wouldn't have somebody saying, it's like, yeah, I just got out of the car and shotgun 3 natty lights. Let's go, motherfuckers. Yeah, I can't imagine that being a good scene, but I everybody has their pre-interview ritual. If yours involves under the advice of a medical professional or a good weed Sherpa, how bad, I suppose.
My doctor gave me this prescription. Also, Skinny Dave down at the shop told me that this is going to be the kindest bud. This is the best shit for getting completely blasted before a big interview.
Takes the edge off of me. It leaves my mind sharp.
Want to go for an issue from the internet?
Yeah, before we do, I will say you could probably, of all the podcasts that could have been asked this question, I feel we are the least prepared to have answered that question, to be honest. I'm not trying to to hamstring ourselves, but I do feel we are underprepared for that type of content. So, work trip to Colorado? We'll call it a research trip. All right. Is it normal to be really annoyed by PMs who constantly do pep talk? By Kevin LQLQ. Looky, little quick. I don't know what that stands for. Is that some sort of internet slang? Is that what the new kids are using?
I'm not cool enough to know.
All right, look it up on Tumblr later, and then we'll edit it in post. Note, I don't work in sales where pep talk is normal. I work as an analyst on a software development team. I will prep you, Frank. This will be some triggering bullshit for you.
Oh no. Let me get strapped in.
I like to get things done since I'm a very fast worker and I prioritize things well. And when speaking, I need people to get to the point instead of bloating a 15-minute meeting into a 60-minute one filled with common sense any adult already knows. Is it normal to be really annoyed by these pep talks that add zero value to the work you're doing? For example, this is the type of stuff our team's PM, which is probably project manager, usually quote unquote contributes to conversations that make them ridiculously long and make me want to say, can you seriously just shut up 99% of what you're saying? We already know. Bullet 1, we need to work efficiently. Yes, Captain Obvious, only idiots won't know that. Bullet 2, we need to work on tasks that generate the most revenue first. Yes, Captain Obvious, we're not 6-year-olds. We need to find the root cause of this bug. Duh. The team needs to work together. Duh. If you need help, don't forget to ask the other team members. Are you serious? I will say that's not me editorializing. Like, that is actually what he's written in this post. I've never worked in management before, but is this seriously 90% of what managers do to quote unquote reinforce common sense to the team without actually contributing anything? Like, I literally feel zero difference in productivity on my team without a PM a few months ago versus the PM joining us now. Maybe it'll be different if the PM actually had some technical knowledge instead of just being a cheerleader.
So, Derek, I want to let you know that in the time that it took you to read that question, the contents of the question, I died of fury, descended into hell, fought the devil because I had things I had to do back on Earth, and clawed my way from the pit back to my seat.
Oh, God. I was hoping that was the reaction that I would get. Because, like, this person, so the format that they have chosen to ask this question is the most reprehensible display of English language I have ever seen. Like, it's like...
Oh, I'm sure. I haven't seen it, and I could tell from here.
Like, I was not editorializing. Like, that was pretty much verbatim what they had written down. All of that was what his original intent was. That is the most juvenile shit that I've seen in a question in a long time. And 2, like, that their whole mindset is, I don't give a fuck about the process. Just let me do my work. And how do you feel about that, Frank?
Like, this is the kind of shit that you run into constantly.
Yeah.
All these cowboy coding lone wolf dildos who think they're not doing in this exact moment what they want to be doing, and thus everyone else is wasting their time. Like, yeah, that's kind of the bane of my existence. So yeah, thanks, Derek, for reading this question and raising my blood pressure. Let me check my Fitbit and see what my fucking heart rate has spiked to while we're sitting here listening to this.
It just says call the hospital.
It's like, just stop. Weird. No, like, yeah, I and part of me, I get it. Nobody likes to sit in meetings except for me because I'm filled with evil and I want to watch other people suffer. But a lot of this comes down to people who just don't have the visibility into the larger systems. They don't have a mind for systems thinking, that the only thing that they can see is themselves, and they can't really see beyond the end of their nose. And so for them, it's like, yeah, we need to do the best work first, duh. Well, how have we determined
not really
what's
duh.
the best work to do?
Right, exactly. Like, there is a process, because, you know, if they're saying we need to work on tasks to generate the most revenue first, well, there may be some evidence that hasn't been done in the past, like that there has been some, you know, something else that has been prioritized over something to deliver the highest value. And honestly, just like a good reminder of that every now and then is not hurting anyone. I mean, unless they literally have like a 45-minute PowerPoint presentation about it, like, sure, that's overkill, but just reminding you about, you know, the tenets of a process, like, that's not asking too much, I feel.
I'm sure this person's response to that it's possible that we could dive further in and find, more precisely the most reward rich thing to be doing in the moment could be. Like, their response 100% is, well, that's not my job, somebody else should do it. But at the same time, if they're half as hot shit indispensable as they think they are, then wouldn't they be the person that, if not in the best position, at least in a position to be part of that conversation?
Right. And that's exactly
and
right.
It's just things like that. It's like, it's just simple, obvious things that people who are so stuck in their own egos are incapable of seeing most of the
Right.
time. Like, you're not getting a pep talk. Like, if your project manager has even the barest modicum of capability, they have no real desire to be sitting here jerking everybody off. Like,
absolutely not.
I could just be sitting at my fucking desk watching Netflix, apparently. I have absolutely no reason or desire to hold a meeting that is absolutely worthless. So if your visibility into that meeting is that it has no value, either you have such a small idea of my intelligence that you think I'm such a raving fucking moron that I don't see that this is a useless meeting, or possibly let's take that and twist it just slightly, and maybe you're the one that's not necessarily seeing why I've decided to call this meeting and the value that we can get out of it.
And that's exactly right. And I will also point out the fact that this guy seems so intent on getting the most efficient delivery of like software and the most efficient delivery of meetings. It literally took me 3 minutes to get through this fucking question, like speed reading like a motherfucker. Like, it took forever. This guy is sitting here subjecting the rest of us to this rambling ass question. Like, when he says, for example, there's like another 40 words before he actually gives an example. Like, it is like another 30 seconds of exposition before he actually gets to his point. He obviously does not know how to concisely convey information. He may be the reason that these meetings are going so long, either because of his incompetence or his obstinance.
Obviously, self-congratulatory dildo. And like,
I'm sorry. For some reason I had the mental flash of like an actual product called a self-congratulatory dildo. And my brain just went off on a tangent on what does that mean? What can that product really tout as its benefits?
I'm doing such a good job. It's got like a little speaker at the base of it, and it says about randomized 25 different phrases.
I'm doing great. I'm getting you right to Flavortown. Anyway, I'm sure you had a point.
Yeah.
Self-congratulatory.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. The point was lost somewhere in the sea of rage that exists within me now.
Oh, God. I think that the main takeaway from this question is don't be this douche. Like, there's a process. If you feel that somebody is bloating these meetings to where, they're no longer useful, have a conversation with them. Talk about, okay, can we make this more concise? But they are being hired to do a job. They're being hired to do something that at least somebody upper management feels is important to be done in these meetings. So work with them, talk with your team, and find some compromise, some middle ground that doesn't involve you flipping the table and walking out like a turd. Be a professional and just talk to people. And this guy's a software developer. Like, we both know people like this. Be a person. Be people for a day and try to get along with other people. Jesus Christ. Come on.
I'm so mad, Derek. I'm so mad.
I was about to ask if you had succumbed to your fury. Look, Frank, you brought this on yourself from bringing up clams in like 3 different situations.
I wouldn't have done it if I thought you were going to do this, Derek.
Revenge is a dish best served cold, unlike clams.
You uncontrollably blasting from all orifices is far more funny than making me face the horrors I have to face every day at work.
I mean,
at least from here. I don't know.
One of the many services that I provide is immersion therapy. And this is a safe space for you to encounter all the things that cause you so much pain. And I feel we're going to get through this. We're in the valley right now, but we'll make our way up to the peak, and we'll look back and wonder why we ever worried.
And I suppose at the end of the day, if the project manager was any good at their job, they would be able to succinctly and eloquently explain exactly the value people will get from this meeting. So perhaps at the end of the day, the issue really lies with the project manager all along. That's me looking deep inside, Derek. Deep inside.
That's all we wanted for you, Frank. This whole podcast has just been to teach you that maybe it's your fault. Sometimes.
This was the longest and least effective goddamn intervention I have ever heard of. This question made me start cocaine, so I think
But it's
we've
okay.
done the opposite of an intervention.
But it's okay. It's an edible, so it probably won't take effect until after the podcast is over. So you're fine.
I ate 2 marijuanas, Derek, and then I died.
Let's punch the clock before you punch my lights out. How about that?
All right, let's punch the clock.
Thank you all so much for listening to the show. We would love to hear from you. So if you have any questions you'd like for us to answer on air, send them to questions@WLIcast.com. You can also visit us on Facebook at facebook.com/WLIcast or on Twitter at WLImbalance and use the hashtag WLIcast.
This has been the Work-Life Imbalance Podcast. I'm Frank Eastman.
And I'm Derek Lewis.
And with that, I think we're going to have to transfer you.
See what I forgot. What I forgot is that the podcast is only for roughly 90 minutes, 2 hours every week. But I've got to live with you for the rest of the week.